Hey everyone, it's John Tai here again from Hatch2O. Thanks for joining us today. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the emerging role of designers in this day and age of the ever-changing landscape of AI, the job landscape, etc. In previous videos that you may have watched, we talked a lot about how AI is affecting our processes. And so with that, today I'm going to talk about that in more depth, but more along the lines of how does that change the role for us as creatives moving forward. Yeah, so when I graduated school, I used to measure up how good of a designer someone was is, like if they could sketch and throw down nice ideation sketches and renderings and things like that. A lot has changed since then because now with AI, a lot of the craft part of our process has been kind of, in a way, not taken away, but like it can be done now at the blink of an eye through artificial intelligence. And so where does that leave us as designers, as creatives? What does that shift us in terms of our roles? I think it shifts our roles into more of the front-end strategy, the contextual awareness, and judgment and taste, right? So there's a lot of things we used to be able to do, and still some of we're still doing it, but you're slowly seeing that delegated now to artificial intelligence. Things like sketching, right? Sketching, rendering, coming up with illustrative ideas. We used to do that by hand, even if we were doing it on a Wacom or pen and pencil, you're starting to be able to see AI just pump those out like, infinite times faster than we as humans can. There's CAD, right? Where we CAD and then we put it into KeyShot and render. Well, now you could pump out a render in Midjourney or VizCom in the blink of an eye. So where does that leave us? I think in some sense, while the craft is really fun for us, and we don't ever want to fall into the trap of being artists, right? Where we're so bound to the expressionism of our craft that we're not focused on what design really is. And design really is a solution for an outcome, right? Yes, we're using creative craft as a means to an end, but at the same time, how we sketch, how we CAD, how we render is not necessarily the end all for a perfect product experience at the end of the day. Now, it's debatable, and, I fall into that category of, really liking a lot of those aspects of the craft, but I think it's also healthy for us to look forward and see where we fit into that process. And so now I see designers probably should be focused on more of the art creative direction, where you're curating the best ideas. Yes, you may be able to sketch a really hot car sketch or a really, juicy render, but is that really going to serve the solutions moving into the future? I don't know, but I can tell you that honing in on your aesthetic ability to understand what makes good, and being able to pull out the best ideas from hundreds of iterations and knowing that that is, what's appropriate and what's going to sell. I think those kinds of skills are going to be more important moving into the future. So design with AI is starting to show that design is becoming more interdisciplinary. And what I mean by that is when it was more human craft based, we were specialists, right? Specializing in industrial design, specializing in graphic design, specializing in UX, UI design, human factors, etc. And now what we're seeing is as artificial intelligence is able to handle some of those specialized craft aspects of those disciplines, what is becoming more important is for the designer to understand business, strategy, brand, the high level aspects of what makes a good design solution, and not as much about, is that the right color? Is that the right line weight for that sketch? In that sense, I think the lines of what defines a designer between, an industrial designer, a business strategist, or an engineer, those lines are starting to blur a little bit. We're seeing now, like in terms of deliverables, industrial designers are starting to deliver video output now, right? So are they videographers? Are they animators? Not necessarily, but those lines are starting to blur in the sense of how we tell the story of the design solutions we're creating. So I had a question from back when I was at the AI symposium at Adobe. I had a lot of students come up to me and say, well, hey, if AI is able to do all these things, what should we focus on? What are the skills that we need to focus on so that we remain employable? And to be humble about it, my true answer was, I don't know, but I have an inkling that it does happen to do with taste again, right? And understanding what makes good, what makes something appropriate. And so while I do think yes, sketching, rendering, CAD, at least for industrial designers, may be potentially delegated away to a machine or to artificial intelligence. That does not mean that the designers in school, while you're in school, should not still learn about this. You should still learn how to sketch and do form development so that you are training your brain to understand, well, is that curve the right curve? Does that accelerate in the same way? Is that radius the appropriate radius or not? I think you don't want to over delegate those skills to the point where you're not learning how it's done, because I think similar to a chef and a sous chef, right? You're the head chef. If you're a designer, you're the head chef. You have to know what makes good good. How do you know if something tastes bad or tastes good, right? And then you have to delegate that to your sous chef to then carry that out. Same with AI. And so I think while their designers are in school or this time of kind of this shift with AI, designers have to really hone in on their aesthetic sense, hone in on their design strategy of understanding what is appropriate and the positioning and the targets they're trying to hit for that user experience. So to wrap this up, I think, the idea that, it's human versus machine for the future of design, I don't think that's true, right? I think it's more about how do we as humans integrate and co-pilot with artificial intelligence in a symbiotic relationship moving forward for design. And what I mean by that is, I think artificial intelligence, I know a lot of people call AI a tool. It is and it isn't. I think it's a little more complex than that. It's almost like your own mini intern. And I think we as designers have to learn how to work with AI, as opposed to like, hey, it's just CAD, it's just Keyshot. It's not that. It's really an amplification of your own skill set. And so in that sense, I think we have to learn how to work with AI. We have a choice as designers. We don't have to give every aspect of the process away. If you like sketching, then keep sketching, right? And then delegate the processes that you don't want to do to the AI. Maybe you don't like doing mood boards, then fine, have AI help you do the mood boards, and then you own the process of sketching. Maybe you're not as good at sketching and you like doing the CAD work, right? So delegate some of that early conceptual ideation to AI and you curate the best designs to then develop in CAD. So I think that's where I say AI is a little more complex than just a tool, because I think for every designer, it integrates differently with the person in a symbiotic manner, right? So for me, for instance, I like using it to amplify my ideas through sketching. I still like sketching. I don't want to give that away. I never want to give that away. So I'll use a program like VisCom where sketching is the input, and then I'll ideate using that. I know others, maybe they're not as good at sketching, so they'll use Midjourney and they'll just type, and they like typing in, exactly what they want to see. So it just really depends on the designer. Yeah, so let me just conclude with just giving some advice for designers, because I know the job market is scary right now. The loom of AI destroying all of our jobs is a hot topic everywhere. It's pretty polarized. But here's what I think. I think if you're a creative, whether you're an industrial designer, UX, whatever you are out there, you need to be experimenting with AI now. You need to be experimenting and figuring out how that integrates with your work process. Don't look at it as this boogeyman thing and not touch it, because then you won't understand it enough to figure out how it can help you. So that would be my advice for fresh grads, those still in school, those looking for employment right now. Experiment, figure out how it's going to work for you, and then amplify yourself. And then in this ever-changing landscape, as long as you're staying up to date with the experimentation, you're going to be fine. So if you like this video, I know this is a little bit different format of just talking about ideas. I'd love to hear your feedback in the comments below. If you haven't already, subscribe, click the subscribe button and the alerts button so you know when we have a new video. And until then, let's hatch awesome.